Beautiful people, beautiful people. So I am sitting with the one and only Larry Pendleton, um, Chief Financial Officer of Next Level Investments. And I don't want to take up too much of the time, so this is not going to be, a prolonged um, experience, but I do want to get to the heart of the matter, which is how you can get access to the same deals that high net worth people are getting access to. Not something like the same deal, the exact same deal, the exact same deal. And one of the things, so we can't go into too much detail about specific deals, reason being because per federal guidelines, we're not allowed to openly market. These type of deals that we're going to discuss are not deals that you'll ever see promoted on social media, that you'll never see just randomly, sent to you via email. These type of deals, you literally, by federal law, there has to be a pre-existing relationship with someone like Larry before you can even get wind of what's going on behind the scenes. Hence the name closed door deals, right? This is something that goes on that requires you to have a relationship with people like Larry to even, like I said, even understand that it's happening. By the time you see these like apartment buildings or things hitting the news under new management or these complexes and commercial properties being built, these type of deals that we're discussing right now have already been put together. The investors are already starting to generate money by the time you ever hear about it. But with no further ado, Larry, it's great to have you. Thank you for spending a couple minutes with us and kind of explain to us what you do. So just kind of jump in quickly. um, you're a chief financial officer. What does that mean in layman's terms to the average, Jane or Joe?
In average terms, and thanks for having me. First and foremost, I appreciate the opportunity. The chief financial officer means I kind of oversee the books, money coming in, money coming out, distributions, taxes, so for just like this kind of forecasting, budgeting, so forth. Those things is what my primary focus there as CFO or whatever business I'm associated with.
Gotcha. Now you're CFO of Next Level Investments, but you also sit on the chair of several companies, several investing companies, correct?
Yes.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now, I'm going to tell them a personal story, only because it still blows my mind how we were sitting in, I think we were in Chattanooga, we were sitting in the airport. Um, you were preparing to go, and you always keep your spreadsheets of your properties actually pulled up, right? You can always, like, how some people keep social media browsers open. You keep your spreadsheets of your properties pulled up at all times. It's kind of explain to us why. You're literally the only investor I know who does that, but you know.
I mean, I guess it kind of goes back to my I'm 10 plus years CPA accounting background. So like if the numbers don't make sense to me, then like the deal doesn't work. So I recall that conversation you were dropping me off at the airport, and like I was reviewing the financials of a pro forma from a broker that I was reviewing the deal, and the numbers just didn't make sense. And like I say, it takes time to kind of figure out. I'm not going to sit here and say I have the key instinct of just kind of knowing that stuff right away. It took time to kind of realize and like learn from those who've done this before me of, okay, there's certain rules of thumb that most operators or syndicators, basically people that kind of get in like, that basically oversee these larger deals are kind of looking for, and it doesn't stray too far away from these rules of thumb. So for me to kind of like just pick up from that and then kind of see the picture of, okay, these numbers don't make sense. Like, how are they operating the way they're operating, as well as asking for the price that they're asking for.
So literally just from seeing the spreadsheet of their financials, you can determine like, hey, no, the picture that they're trying to sell you, let's say it's an apartment complex and they're trying to say, hey, this has great upside, great revenue potential, X, Y, and Z. You're actually looking at past performance and you can tell whether they're selling you smoke or if it's a legitimate opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, because it's all about time at that point. I mean, you have, like I said, it's. I mean, same with any level of real estate, you have to be able to get an offer out as quickly as you can. So, I mean, I try to be within 24, 48 hours of once I get that pro forma from the broker, can I go through those numbers? Can I make sense of it and then shoot it back to them like these like before we go forward? I don't want to disrespect anybody by coming with a low offer, but here's what I'm seeing. Here's what's driving my numbers, driving my logic behind these numbers here. So I mean, and most of the time, you have to remember that it's a pro forma. They're going to overly exaggerate. The seller's always going to overly exaggerate how well the property is doing or how much work they put into it. But comparing to the actual T12s or the rolling 12-month financials, like it to make those type of jumps like doesn't make sense, especially if you're trying to come in as a operator with other people's money. Like you really have to be cautious of those type of traps along the way.
Now that's something that you mentioned, other people's money. With me teaching real estate investing, one of the big things that people, what they'll say to me is, hey, I want to get started, in real estate investing, but I want to use other people's money. And 99% of the time they're saying that because they are afraid to invest their own money. Even if, let's say, they only have $1,000 to their name, they wouldn't put that $1,000 up behind, their own real estate investment because they haven't learned. So, it's not a matter of not having the money, because even what little money you do have, if you're not willing to invest it, it's because deep down inside, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. So, if you're looking at your real estate investing activities as a risk, and instead of, hey, an opportunity to make a return, risk is inherent with not knowing what you're doing. So to whatever degree you don't know what you're doing, that's the level of risk that you're taking on when you're moving forward. But your role, if I understand it correctly, is to literally look at the numbers and make sure that the OPM, the other people's money who's being invested in each deal that you set up, is not being jeopardized, or that they're not being oversold on the potential performance of the property that you're acquiring.
Exactly. And I mean, to be completely frank, I mean, it's always other people's money. You can buy a single family house. No one's stroking $100,000 check to buy someone's house. They may get the money from the bank and they think it's the bank's money, but it's still other people's money. So the banks they have underwriting processes because they're protecting the bank, like the bank's money, which is all the people who have deposits in that bank. So it's no different from doing a single family to doing a 20 unit to doing a 500 unit apartment building. It's all about you're going to get involved with other people's money, whether through another source or directly to the source. And that's kind of where we're all at this point right now. We're kind of getting directly to the source, which is actually talking to people and not talking to a bank.
Gotcha. So that's part of the way, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but that's part of the way that you're able to offer up these higher return investment vehicles, because there is no third party per se that's telling you what you can and can't do, or how you can maximize the return on this property or not. You have a team of people who are talking directly to the property owners. Am I understanding you correctly?
But yeah, I mean, it depends. Like I said, sometimes it's through the brokers. Most of the time, you're going to get a lot of deals through the brokers, because especially when, like I said, that's where when you get into the larger apartments, you're dealing with other investors who are operating a business per se. They're not just kind of just trying to sell their home or kind of doing stuff on the side where they need they may or may not use a real estate agent. Like when you're talking about someone who has a 100-unit apartment building, then they're going to be using a broker because they're not sitting there trying to sell that property themselves. Like they're running a business, which is why lending is so different once you start getting to the commercial apartment level type of properties. So sometimes it's off market, and you can make some good deals in that way, but many of the time
so it just depends on which level you're talking about. If you're talking about smaller, maybe 8 units, 16 units, that might be.
You may or may not get that off market, like I say, or you'll see it on market, and you can tell that the person selling may or may not know what they're doing. And they end up eventually going to a broker. Like I'm looking at a 7-unit now locally here, and it's kind of the same thing where I actually seen that property someone actually had to remind me that we put a bid out on that property. And it's like you go through so many, you forget, and it's like, oh, okay, like what happened? I know obviously it didn't accept, but I need to find those emails of what did we offer, and then what's changed from it was like only about 4 or 5 months ago. It was 2020. I said now that they told me, like, okay, I remember it. I just don't remember I just see the numbers. Like, I don't see the address. I may see the street that is on in what city, and it's if I'm familiar with that city in that area, it's like, okay, I'm just gonna put in the zip code. Rent's gonna be probably around whatever this amount, and then I'm gonna break down the potential net income from there.
Gotcha. Now, I don't want to lose people with all this financial talk. Let's kind of talk about you personally, because one of the things that's different about you, you know, you'll talk to people who are involved in the real estate industry, but they don't necessarily have their own portfolio, right? So meaning that you'll have loan officers, real estate agents who don't own investment property, loan officers who don't own investment property, bankers. They're a part of how we're able to put these deals together, but they don't necessarily, like, on their own accord, they're not actually at the table as an investor. But you actually are, like, you actually do have your own portfolio of rental properties. So just kind of tell me, how did you get started? What was your first deal like? How did you take the jump from just simply being, involved in real estate investing to actually being an investor yourself?
I actually used to be one of those people, like I said, to be doing CPA, people's taxes for like over a decade. Like I've have many of clients who have rental portfolios, and I knew the benefits that they're getting from a tax perspective. I guess that limiting mindset didn't think like that was for me. I was fortunate enough. I'm still fortunate enough to be partnered with Terry on Conyers, who was my tax partner, and we're also partners on a lot of what's in our portfolios. Where he was already in the real estate game for a while, and then roughly about 4 years ago, he told me about a property here locally in Norfolk, Virginia. He had too much on his plate at the time and told me to go for it. And I said, I've been asking him about it, and kind of just picking his brain on it for a year at the time. And it was like, okay, this makes sense. And like I said, and then once I saw it, then like I said, basically took whatever funds I had, whether it was parts of a IRA, whether loan myself out of an IRA account or whatever. I just kind of made that deal work. 203K loan to make the interest payments low and keep the renovations all in, and still have that property to this day cash flowing at roughly $300 a month after everything is paid for. So that was my first deal there. My worst deal was actually a flip out of Portsmouth locally, and it was a sub-2 deal with the owner. The person that set it up, I mean, like I said, I still work with her now. Like, it wasn't her fault. Like I said, it was really more of me not really understanding like my limits and my strengths, not building the right team around me to properly attack it, where we should have been done in 2-3 months. It ended up taking from purchase to renovating to selling it. It took us a year. And
wow.
And I said, same thing, had investors involved, and I said, no one lost any money. Investors made a few dollars on it. I mean, I made nothing. But
Hey, it'd be that way sometimes.
Yeah,
You're gonna take a loss.
like I say, I definitely see that. I think, like I say, some people call it like just those learning experiences. So it's easy kind of get wrapped up in the negative side, but I'm able to take that and expand upon, like, okay, here's what I learned from this. And even though that was a rough period for me that year, there was a lot of, I still saw real estate as the means of like kind of having that financial freedom, being able to accomplish or strive for my mission in life. And like I said, that's why I'm still into it to this day.
Gotcha. So quick question. When you say it took a year, most flips, unless you're doing like not even new construction, takes a year. So just, I gotta know what about that project took so long? That's a
Just
deep breath. I know this is about to be good.
I mean, when I say it was a rough period, I'm talking about you got family involved. You got, like I said, a lot of uh, scars that took a while to heal from that. So like when I take a deep breath and like my wife kind of saw the effect that, because you're still working a 9 to 5 job, and like I said, and from where I worked at to where that property is probably roughly like an hour drive. So
Wow.
having to go there during lunch, like dropping off materials, like dealing with the contractors, like dealing with the plant, the family that was involved. I say it just, and you got delays and other stuff that pops up and disagreements. As like I said, I just did a terrible job with kind of recognizing that like I'm not managing this as effectively as I should be, or I don't at this time I do not have the skill set to do this type of overseeing the people from the contracting them. Like once
Hmm.
the buying the property was nothing, like actually getting the additional capital to keep pushing it forward. Because at one point, like I say, we're paying, it was a sub two, we're paying that owner $1,000 a month, because we thought it would be quick. Like I had to bring someone in, like get the owner paid. Also, kind of slashed our monthly payments in half, and this kind of
Hmm.
like that's what was like, okay, I'm able to do that well. And then after that, the sale, like it went, and that went smoother. Like it was all just within the construction aspect of it. And so it's easy to kind of blame bad weather and all that. It was like, no, like I'm gonna take account for majority, or if not all of everything that kind of like happened. If this was under my watch, like this was my jumping into the having to do a flip, thinking you have to do a flip
Uh-huh.
in order to graduate in real estate. And it's not the case at all.
All right. So you mentioned several things, and I kind of just want to highlight them. The first thing is with you, even with you understanding numbers, and most people think that, well, if I had the money, then I would invest. But even with you having the money, understanding numbers, there was still some trepidation before you pull the trigger on your first deal. Same with me, same with pretty much every investor that I know. It's so we imagine that if we just have the money, I would just invest it tomorrow. You can have the money, have all the knowledge, YouTube, everything ad nauseum, but there's still going to be that moment of truth, like, hey, am I going to pull the trigger? And the other thing that you said, where you said buying the property was the easy part. Most people think that that finding the money for real estate is difficult, and it's not. It is always the facet of the deal. It is all listen. It is always the repair. And then the last thing you said that really caught my attention was, and I explained to people there are hands-on investors and hands-off investors. So the hands-on investors will be, like me. I actually like going out hunting the deals, negotiating with the property owners. I like the hands-on part, overseeing the renovation aspect of it, going to check on the properties. I like it. And then you have hands-off investors. Hey, I like to cut a check and collect a return, and that's their piece of the pie, and that's how they prefer. Um, Now, what you do now in terms of the higher level deals that are hands off, these are specifically for hands off investors. They cut a check, they get a higher return, and you're actually, like I said, I know we can't go into specifics, but when you set up these type of structured deals, it has to be you can only offer to people that you have pre-existing relationships to. So and then B, you're you're in a position, should I say, where a person who may only have say 10 to 20,000 can literally eat off the same deal as a person who's investing 150,000, and they're getting the same return, relative to their investment, but they don't have to put up the same amount to sit at the same table. And I thought that's the whole purpose of me wanting to sit down and you kind of like just without being too specific, without breaking any federal laws, like how is that possible that you can set that up where people are able to eat at the same deal? They're investing in the same, whether it be a commercial, whether it be an apartment, 100-unit apartment, say, for example. How is that possible?
Well, it's possible in the realm of, like I said, and this is, I guess, let me be clear that I'm not getting any legal advice. Like, please talk to a SEC attorney about all this stuff. So, The SEC allows for operators, people who are actually presenting these deals, to reach out to individuals who are either deemed accredited or non-accredited sophisticated investors. So what that means is, if you're accredited, you have these particular criteria that the SEC is saying that you are able to manage money well. Either you're a very high net worth individual, or you make a lot of money, without going into a whole lot of details of like what those dollar figures are. Like, I mean, like I said, please go to an SEC attorney or just read about the 506 guidelines for the SEC if you're having trouble sleeping at night. But but it allows like those accredited investors, and that's just one level of it. Like, okay, you're deemed accredited per se, but like, how do you prove that? And like, typically people get a CPA to write a letter. Like, I've done that, where I wrote letters for many people. Alpha just kind of reviewing their bank statements and their personal financials. Like, yep, this person makes over whatever amount per year, or their net worth is this, and per SEC guidelines, they're accredited investor. Those individuals are exposed to a lot more opportunities than everyone else, because SEC deems like they should be able to. And what does
let me pause you. So what you're saying is that if you're worth a certain dollar amount, the SEC says, hey, you automatically get dibs on you can access these type of deals, because we just assume you already know how to manage money. You know, you're already up here. So it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that once you become wealthy, or you come from a family that's already wealthy, right, you have access to deals that people who are not there yet would have open access to.
Yes, because operators, syndicators, they're going to go to those individuals first, depending how they set up their syndication group. So how they have that set up, typically, like, everyone's going to go directly to the accredited investors, because they're trying to get as much of the capital that they're trying to raise with as less as people as possible. So if they can go and get 6 figures from someone, or in the high five figures, then and they're already deemed to be accredited, they're like, all of the people with the deals are going to go to them first, because like I said, for those reasons. But there also are other, like, that doesn't mean that if you're only making like 60,000-70,000 a year, that doesn't mean you can't have access to those deals. It just depends on how the operator set up their syndication, where if they have it set up where they can solicit directly, I guess, investor to investor to non-accredited investors, and they just have to prove that this individual understands what this deal is. And it's not just, okay, you went to grandma and she can give some money, but like, she doesn't understand. So the SEC kind of cracks down on that, because they don't want nobody being taken advantage of. But if you can prove that this person understands the deal, so like I said, they've done real estate before, they just are just starting, so they know how cash flow works, they know how splits work, so forth and so forth. They just don't have the net worth or the annual income coming in to make them accredited. So they're constantly in networking groups, or they're connected with certain individuals, so they're building networks. So there are different ways to get involved in those deals, where like how we have these structured now, where we're kind of more of a, like I said, it's a 506. I'm going to say this incorrectly, but it's probably a 506B. And like I said, this is not legal advice. Do not need a seat knocking on my door. We're 506B most of the time, because like I said, that gives opportunity to present this deal directly to accredited and non-accredited investors. Doesn't mean we can generally solicit. We just still can't post it.
So it's not like hey, crowdfunding, I'm just willy-nilly, anyone can invest $500. It's more like, so if I understand you correctly, so what you're saying is that people who are wealthy, have open access to these deals. So it's almost like if I have money, then I'm the first person that other people are allowed to call, right? And so that I can keep causing my money to grow significantly. Whereas if I don't meet that threshold, that dollar amount or that wealth figure, then it's probably less than likely that I'll ever even hear about these type of deals, high return deals, because I'm not accredited. Which means, so it's almost like I get that the SEC does put this in place so people don't get taken advantage of, but it also kind of helps to ensure that the people who don't make that dollar amount really don't even know that the opportunity is out there for them to get that type of return on their money, unless they know someone, say, like you.
Yeah, I mean, and that's on. I mean, part of that is I mean, I'll say it's a personal choice for the operator of the deal. Like you said, how like if you're going to do this, then how do you want to present it?
Mhm.
How do you want to present it to others? Like I said, you have every opportunity to present to someone, and all of them. Like I say, even crowdfunding is still another 506 regulation set up where, and it's a lot more red tape with that, because now you can get into generals, like you're kind of posting everything on Facebook, and so there's a lot more red tape with that. So you don't catch too many. Like there's still operators that do that, but you don't catch too many of them. A lot of them, from my experience, kind of fall into that 506B, so they can kind of work with credit and non-credit, especially the the newer ones into the syndication game,
Mhm.
because they're working with people that are close to them who are just starting off like themselves, but they're kind of been networked. They're kind of building their investor pool from the ground up. I mean, it's the same thing that I'm doing. Like a lot of people who kind of know what I'm doing, just kind of like okay, explain this to me. So for kind of having meetings like this one on one with people, and it's like let's kind of run this through before we start talking about any deals, so that when the time comes, like okay, we've had multiple conversations, you know how this goes, and like I said, and we have documented emails. That's why a lot of operators have investor questionnaires, because it comes up more of like a three-touch rule. Like okay, I
Mhm.
talked to you on the phone, you email, you touch, you filled out my questionnaire, so I know you, I know your goals, I know how you, what areas you will invest in, I know what type of returns you want to see, because we built that rapport, we built that pre-existing relationship, and it's substantial. Like it's just not fluff.
Gotcha. So with your position, you're able to take, say, let's say an apartment building, 100-unit complex, and we're just a fictitious example. We don't need the SEC knocking on our door, right? So fictitious example, 100-unit apartment building. You have some accredited investors who've invested some high level money. Let's say you have a couple investors who have invested 250,000 a piece. They're accredited, so they can do that. They can do that because they're accredited. They meet the threshold where you don't have to necessarily educate them X, Y, Z. They're in the deal. But let's say there is a remainder of, say, $50,000, that um, there's $50,000 left. You, as a CFO and the syndicator putting this deal together, can say, hey, listen, I'm willing to get uh, two people a seat at 25,000, or maybe, you know, um, five people a seat at 10,000, to for that last little bit. And what you're doing by doing that is that you're taking the little guy who doesn't have, you know, the 250,000 to put into a big deal like that. But you can say, hey, I'll take what you do have, and I'll allow you to sit at the table, at the same exact table that the person who put in a 250,000, but you'll still get the same return, just relative to that 25,000, 10,000 that you put in. And so they're safeguarded because obviously the accredited person, first off, you're a man of integrity, so I know that you're not even going to structure a deal that you yourself wouldn't invest in. But beyond that, they're safeguarded because if you have people who are putting in six figures and all you're putting up is 10, well, obviously these people are putting it into the same exact pie. And I think that's interesting and wonderful that you're able to, you're willing to, let's put it that way, that you're willing to uh, take the last little remainder that's needed to close the deal up and still kind of break it down so that people who don't have that $250,000 to put in can still sit at the same exact table. Tell me what kind of inspired you to kind of run your deals that way?
Just personal experience. You kind of see, like I said, I mean, everyone's looking for just a shot to to be involved with something like this, um, and for me, like to kind of go from like not thinking I would ever be part of a apartment building deal to actually being part of offering like to apartment building deals and actually closing on apartment building deals, and it's like this is actually possible for everyone. Everyone just kind of needs to be exposed to it. So really, my initial point was kind of I can build my own investor pool uh, by just bringing people to the table. And like I say, you also allow a certain number of investors to be in any syndication. Um, I think it's 34, 35 that you're allowed to bring on, but like there's a certain number of slots that you're kind of allowed to kind of put people in. So like you only have to wait for the big investor to come in. You can go ahead and start sending them out one by one to people that you deem to be non-accredited, but understand how these deals work or understand how real estate works. And they say even with let's say you do an office building, or the people that are non-accredited understand how commercial properties work, and like I said,
Mm-hmm.
that helps them with that non-accredited aspect of it, but still be able to get involved without the concern about okay maybe they're being taken advantage of with just kind of fancy numbers and whatnot. So, but that was so kind of back to the point. That was really my motivation of like kind of seeing where I wanted to be involved and like having to kind of chip away at it, and like it took some time, but like I said, I'm able to kind of network and work with people who own over 600 other 600 units themselves under their businesses, and it's like okay, and they're trying to tap into markets that I'm currently in. So
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, but so they're trying to leverage my experience here. So it's like okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now I can actually keep the door cracked for other people who want to
Mm-hmm.
get involved. Who like I say, and I mean, no one like I say, you kind of look at no one's stroking checks for $1 million for an apartment complex. Like everyone's getting some type of leverage involved, whether it's through a bank or through some private lender, or they're able to raise all the money themselves through their investor pool. So it's like I say it's about just giving people opportunities. That's what's kind of been the big thing for me.
I like it. I like it. So, all right, last thing. Well, second to last thing. I want to understand your process. So I contact you. You can't obviously because there's no pre-existing relationship. When I first contact you, I contact you. Um, you build a relationship with me, and then you can start to keep me in mind if you have a couple seats left on some of these bigger projects that you're working on. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so like we'll like I say, and like I said, these things don't I mean there's always an abundance of them. It's just whether or not they become a actual deal. There's a lot of opportunities out there. It's just whether or not they become deals. So I mean, once a month, like I say, if nothing coming up, I'll probably just still catch up, just kind of see like here's what's going on. Um, we're looking at this one where our numbers are underwriting way low than what they're asking for. The market's hot, so they may not going to drop it at this particular time.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see. But like I said, that's just kind of keeping the discussions going. I say whether it's like text messages, emails, just it's not really a bombarding of communication. It's just enough to kind of keep it fluid, keep it enough. So I say Amriel, and say we always try to push for the questionnaire because that kind of gives me opportunity to go back because I say you start networking, you go through your phone, and it's like man, you can easily have 100 people, and most of them are going to be non-accredited,
Mm-hmm.
and if you have a questionnaire like okay now I know this individual only wants to invest in areas they can actually drive to within 2 hours. So okay, why would I waste their time? I still may bring it up
Mm-hmm.
just for the sake of conversation, but I said I know this is not your thing, but we're building rapport along the way, or they may want to know why I'm willing to step outside of my area that I live in if I'm still I'm building boots on the ground or I can't see it physically myself on a consistent basis, stuff like that.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right. So this is the last thing. And I ask this for anyone that I kind of have this one-on-one with. How can people contact you? No 800 numbers, like directly contact you. But first off, are you willing to provide that information?
Yeah. So
Okay. Okay. That's fair.
they can email me at larry@nextlevelinvestmentsva.com. I'm not sure if you got show notes or anything. I'm not sure how that
I'll put
works.
some. I'll put some.
Or they can text or call me at 757-535-8592. If I don't answer, that means I don't recognize your number, and I'm not going to answer numbers I don't recognize. So please leave a voicemail. And like I said, typically between 24 40 hours, I try to reach back out and return calls and text messages as soon as I can. So, but yeah, I mean, it's like, this is about building more relationships, getting more people to the table, and having these discussions. I mean, the problem that people can't even get to non-accredited status is because they lack exposure. They lack lack seeing stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like once you start exposing them just from like generic talking emails, like not even talking about deals, just like, here's an example of something that sold. Like, I'm not in it, but here's how we broke down our numbers, and here's how we're operating it. Or if I'm able to kind of know the details of another deal that I know another operator is working on, they're willing to share, like, okay, here's how they're like, here's what they're doing, here's what I'm trying to learn from them and incorporate into our system and processes. So
I
that's
know I
that.
said last thing, but actually, the last thing, when you just brought up something that kind of, what should people look out for when it comes to, obviously you got to get to know the operators such as yourself who are putting these deals together, but what should they look out for in terms of when they're talking to someone like you, and that type of thing? What do they need to look out for when they're working with another operator or syndicator?
A real good book to really pick up is the Hands-Off Investor. I can't recall the author of that book, but the Hands-Off Investor. And there's another one as well. Like Passive Investing Through Commercial Real Estate is another one. Another gentleman name is James K. Actually met him in person.
Oh, that's good.
Um, but they actually wrote, these books are really written from the passive investor side of things, like where kind of like the basics of real estate, what to look for. Because once you understand yourself, what you're looking for in your investments, and the reason why you're not actively doing it, probably because you don't have the time, you don't want to be a landlord, you don't want to deal with like
Construction crews and such.
passive investors, like you have a particular reason why you just want to kind of stay basically a shareholder to a stock. That's basically what it is, a shareholder. You want to stay in that role and just kind of sit back and just collect checks monthly, quarterly, whatever, and get your principal back in 3, 5, 7 years, wherever's agreed upon. So so those two books would definitely help with kind of getting that base understanding, because like I say, because I'm biased, and so it's like what would I won't do, like trying not to get too emotionally involved with the property. Like if the operator that you're talking to is overly optimistic about the property, then that's a concern there, because there's risk in all of this.
Mm-hmm.
One of the very few benefits well, there's a lot of benefits in real estate, but one of the things is like, I mean, once you properly structure insurance, like it's I won't say it's impossible, but it's tough to lose all your money. You're at least able to at least get your principal back, whether through insurance,
Yeah,
that the equities and your money is in the building itself. Does the operator understand, like, okay, you're buying this building, what are the tenants or the residents that's going to be in this building? Like who are they selling to? Like, you're not going to have a bunch of executives in the apartment building the same as people who do the janitor work. And there's nothing wrong with either side. It's just you're not going to see that particular dynamic in an apartment building. It's just facts. It's like, I'm not judging anyone. It just is what it is. It's just like those two books are great, because you can really start trying to like poke holes into it, and especially if you're not like familiar with the market. Like, is the operator familiar with the market themselves? Like, are they doing it themselves? Like, are they in it themselves? Like, how are they comfortable? Like, is it just one person at the top? Like, is it just me? Like, I'm not gonna be the only operator in any of my deals, because if anything happens to me, then it's like, okay, everything kind of just goes back to where it was. Where
I don't want to say the name of a very well-known investment uh, organization, we'll call it, just to really keep it ambiguous, where the SEC clearly writes, if you review their paperwork, that it's kind of like that structure, what you're saying, where if the one person who knows everything, if anything happens to that person, be it death, incapacitation, anything like that, they're clearly saying you would be at great risk for losing money. But you say that the deals that you work with, you're not. It's not a single man operation, meaning that if anything happened to you, the money is still safeguarded because you have a team of people who can do what you do and ensure that the property continues to perform.
yeah, and plus there's also components of, and like I say, anyone can kind of just be like oversee their one property. Like, you can kind of just do everything you want. And I mean, I have investors coming up to me where it's like, okay, what if I give you 25,000? Like, can I just like take that money and buy a property myself and make higher returns? Yes. Like, you could, but you're assuming all the risk. You're doing all the work. Like, and you have like, and do you understand what you're getting into? Like, I'm not scaring them from that, but
You're educating them.
you need to be fully aware of what like you're getting into. Where this one, that you're not getting as high of return when you're doing it yourself, but now you're like, I'm leveraging you for the capital that you're willing to invest, plus you're leveraging me and my team on our experience. And like I say, instead of spreading myself too thin and being the one and only operator, like, okay, as like I said, my thing is the numbers. Like, I do that all day, every day. I have a partner that deals with the contractors and renovation side of things. We have someone that deals with investor relations, and I think I'm a cheery guy, but I don't think I can do investor. Like, I could do investor relations. Let me not be so negative about myself. But it's just like, why focus on spreading myself to maximize my gain? Where like, okay, if I can just do this piece for multiple groups, multiple syndication groups, then I feel like I can make a pretty decent.
So you kind of just focus on what you actually specialize in.
Yes.
You're not trying to jump out there and play every role, which is what you have to do as a property owner. If you're going to be the hands-on investor, you're getting a higher return because you're having to play every role. And not to make this too personal, but I remember personally with my own investment firm where I was doing too much to the point where people would contact me to purchase their properties, and I wouldn't even call them back. I was literally leaving money on the table. I wouldn't even, because that's the part that people don't understand with being hands-on versus hands-off. You've got to understand who you are and then how you operate, or else it's not real estate investing itself that's risky. It's not having that experience that you were just talking about that will make anything. I mean, ironing your clothes is risky if you don't know how to work an iron. You know what I mean? So I don't want to take up too much of your time. Lastly, just hit us with that phone number again where they can call or text, and understand you said, hey, if I don't know you, I'm not going to answer. But if you text, I'll respond within 24, 48 hours. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, 757-535-8592.
All right. All right. I appreciate your time, Larry. And I know that people will get in contact with you and you'll follow up 24 to 48 hours.
24, 48 hours. You can
All
bet
right.
on that.
All right. Take care.